Joan, thank you so much for that kind introduction. I am truly humbled by winning this award this year, and it's really an amazing honor. I've been at these breakfasts over the years, and I've witnessed the incredible accomplishments of my friends and colleagues like Joe Fitzgibbon, Reuben Carlisle, Christine Rolfes, and Gail Tarleton, and many others who've earned this recognition. So I'm very humbled to be in their company and for WCV to have viewed my work in their light. I want to thank my incredible staff this year. I was really busy and I had great work. We've got great young people in politics who are working behind the scenes who helped us get this bill through. My staff, Anna, Crystal, and Jopna, and our professional staff in the legislature, including Gare Wilburn and many others who are unnamed who helped us craft this piece of legislation. So thank you. I want to say a few words about how I see where we are and what we need to do to combat it. And I'm going to start with this. Some of you may have seen a few weeks ago, it's September 12th, the New York Times published a list of 85 environmental and conservation rules that President Trump has or is in the process of rolling back. Now, it's hard to identify one out of 85 that are the worst. They're all bad, they're all awful, and it's mind-boggling at times and depressing to think what they've been able to do in 3 short years. But this is the world we find ourselves in today. Sometimes I feel it's more like George Orwell's 1984, not 2019, where up is down, ignorance, they say, is strength, and President Trump says he is, quote, someone who cares deeply about the environment. Yes, he actually said that. So what can we do? What can be done? Can we do more than bury our heads in our respective Americanos and chai lattes and so forth? So for one thing, we don't have to go along to get along, and Joan has identified our great leaders like Bob Ferguson and Hillary Franz and Governor Inslee, of course, who have set this gold standard for what the next presidential administration should do. So I want to say again, thank you to Governor Inslee for everything you did during this presidential race. Every candidate is adopting some version of his program, and I think that's remarkable. So what can we do in the legislature to continue to work toward and insist on pro-environment majorities that are about getting environmental wins day to day and year to year? What does this mean in real terms? Well, the polluter pays bills, which we didn't quite get the video of, but I want to give you a little bit of background on what happened. It's a perfect example. In 1988, the state passed a landmark law to ensure that polluters pay for the cleanups that flow from the industrial and commercial uses of their products. And at the time we passed that legislation, we had 542 toxic sites to be cleaned up. But by 2019, that number had grown to multiple of thousands, at least 6, and some say as many as 12,000, with thousands of sites awaiting funding and new sites added every year. 85% of those contaminated sites were based or contained petroleum contamination. But what had happened in those 31 intervening years since our 1988 law is that the rate that we assessed primarily on the oil refineries had never been changed, and the funds available for a variety of structural and policy reasons had atrophied. And as the capital budget lead for our caucus for the last several years, I found that what you, the taxpayers, have been doing is borrowing money to pay for whatever cleanups we could do. So imagine that. We have a fund to pay for cleanups. It's primarily funded by an assessment on the oil industry, but it's been hollowed out over the years, even as oil profits and tax benefits for them have soared. And then the taxpayers of Washington were borrowing money to pay for the few toxic cleanups that we could actually do. So this was wrong, and this had to change. And so we went to work with the help of WCV. We built a coalition led by this organization that included ports, local governments, our friends in labor and the tribes, and many others. Working with WEC and the WCV, we introduced a strong, aggressive bill, understanding that even if we had to make some compromises in the end, we were starting from the strongest possible position. And we were very tactical this year. I suggested we introduce the bill early, and at WCV's government affairs teams, at their request and their advice, we waited till the most strategically opportune time when everybody was going crazy with the budget and people's heads were kind of spinning out of control. That's when we dropped the bill to kind of, surprise is the best element sometimes in the art of war, I suppose. So during committee, someone advocating for the oil industry actually told me, Frockt, you're not playing fair, because the bill wasn't given enough time before the hearing so that we could kill it. And I listened quietly, and I don't like to be rude, I like to be polite to everybody, but I thought to myself, man, you guys have been killing this thing for decades, but not this year. We're going to play to win, and we're going to win. So as the bill progressed, those representing the oil refineries reached out to me to see if there was a different way forward. Now, I think, in any complex piece of legislation, you have to listen, you have to engage, and I did that. But on every instance, and in consultation with the WCV, the message was the same. Even after 30 years and billions in tax incentives and profits that that industry had reaped, they would never agree to anything that resulted in the oil industry paying a dime more for these cleanups. They could agree on a volumetric standard, but only if it was revenue neutral. Imagine that, revenue neutral, even though we had thousands of cleanups that were in the hole. This was completely unacceptable, and that would defeat the entire point of the bill. So we went to the floor of the Senate with a strong bill, and because of your work, because you helped us elect environmentally strong majorities, we used those majorities to withstand huge pressure. Dozens of amendments in both the Senate and the House that would have gutted the bill. Now, I remember being on the floor as the debate in the Senate dragged on into the second and third hour, and I was getting a bit punch drunk at the back and forth with certain senators on the other side. You can guess which ones or one. Like I said, I'm a polite guy. I'm not going to name any names. Christine and Reuben came over to me like my corner in a boxing match, and they said to me, Frockt, hang in there, you're doing great. And I think I said something like this, you guys, if the spirit moves you, feel free to jump in here. And they did. We had a lot of great legislators with their hand in this bill. Senator Reuben Carlisle and Representative Strom Peterson helped draft and drafted initial versions of it over the years. Christine, Representative Steve Theringer, Joe Fitzgibbon, and Gerald Tarleton helped push it forward in committee and on the floor. Majority leaders Andy Billig and Pat Sullivan and Speaker Chop committed to it. And then there were gutsy new senators like Senator Liz Lovett. I think Liz is here. Liz, wave if you're here. Liz was brand new to the legislature. She'd been in a couple of months, and her district includes most of the oil refineries. But I remember specifically calling her into my office to talk to her about the bill and ask her for her support. And she didn't even bat an eye when I asked her to support it, because she knew it was the right thing to do. That's the kind of leadership that you're going to help elect when we re-elect Liz to the state Senate this year. So I've been in office for 10 years, and I'm proud of my record, but in terms of true legislative accomplishment, I feel this bill ranks at the top because we had not been able to do anything for decades. The oil industry killed a version of it, one form or another, for years. But this year, under the radar and without much fanfare, we used guile and strategy and sheer political power to win. And all of that flowed from you, the people in this room. WCV builds itself as the political voice for the environment. But what that means is that this voice is not merely about being a debating society. It's about power, acquiring it and using it to protect our air, our water, our lands, and to preserve them for generations to come. And unlike many interest groups, WCV understands the politics of how to get things done. They understand that it's about having elected the right people to be in the right place at the right times with the right policy agenda behind them. The best advice I ever received in politics came from Zach Silk, who many of you know, and when he told me in my first run for office as I was going on, and he said, David, that's great, but it's about one thing. It's all about the math, man. It's all about the math. And Nancy Pelosi, he must have been advising her because she alluded to this when she ascended to the speakership recently for the second time, and she asked what the secret to her political skills were. And she said something like, well, I learned them all in second grade when I learned how to count. You see, it's all about math. It's not complicated math. This isn't SAT stuff, but it's math nonetheless. And because of WCV and because of you, we now have the math. We now have the numbers to lead the world on climate change, to ensure that polluters pay their fair share for the environmental hazards that their products create, and to enhance our pro-environment policies in this state. And so I hope you'll give yourselves a huge round of applause for that work. Thank you so much. So even when it looks bleak, and even when we see what the administration in Washington is doing, please don't despair, because I know that over time we're going to win. The math is on our side, the people are on our side. So let's go to work, let's keep working, let's keep it going in the state legislature, let's win in these elections, and thank you so much. I appreciate this award more than you could possibly know. Thank you very much. Thank you.